Hey everybody, Mean Joe from Legend Hobby. Welcome to the next video in the Maxi lift assembly video. In this video, we're going to be covering control surfaces. We're going to show you how to hook up a pole system. We're going to talk about elevator, rudder, ailerons, and flaps, and we're going to get this thing ready to go. So stay tuned. Here we go. All right, so now the next step is going to be to start getting our control surfaces hooked up. I've already got the elevator on the other side hooked up, and I thought I'd show you a quick, real easy, quick tip to help you along with this. I've simply got two dowels, and all I've done is put a rubber band around one end. The dowels don't make any difference, whatever size you want. I like to use a little thicker ones. These are actually 3/8, and they hold it pretty good. All you have to do with your control surface is go ahead and place the dowels over your control surface like this, and then all you simply do is take a rubber band from the other side and put the rubber band on it. And what that does is that holds your surface level so that when you connect your control rod, you should be pretty close to a level where you want to be. And obviously you might have to do a little adjustments with your elevator servos. This will have dual elevators on it, so you're going to have to set the airplane up with dual elevators, and then you might have some trim a little bit, but this should make it pretty close. This is just a quick, easy way to hang on to the control surface so that the control surface isn't moving around on you while you're trying to hook up your control surfaces. And then simply for this airplane, all you're going to do is take the 820 millimeter control rod. It's already got the clevises and the lock nuts on it, and then you're just simply going to attach it to your servo and then your control rod that's underneath here on your elevator. Okay, so now you can see I've got the tail surfaces. This is the rudder servo. You can see I did a pull on this. You can check out the 2-minute tech videos to see how I did all this setup here. And on this particular model, they already have installed the guide tubes up in here for the rudder cables. So I didn't do a cross with my pull because it was going to be putting too much strain on that tube right there. The crossover was going to be a little bit too far back. So what I did is I just went ahead and ran them straight back, and that'll be good to go. The only thing that really does with the crossover is to be able to give you a better exit on the side of the airplane, a little bit cleaner. That's really all it does. So you can see here everything works perfectly. I will need to tighten these cables up a little bit once I get out into the field and put a couple flights on it, because these steel cables, they will stretch a little bit. And then you can see here at the back, I've went ahead and got everything set up here as well. We've got the same setup on the rudder cables here, as well as we've also got the elevators attached as well. Now, one of the things to keep in mind with these types of clevises, you're going to want to make sure that you put some silicone tubing over the end of these so your clevises don't come open in flight and you lose a flight surface. So now you can see everything's all set up and ready. So now my elevator and my rudder are all set up and ready to go. Now we're going to move on to the ailerons and flaps. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and get the controls set up on the wings. One of the first things you're going to want to do, what I normally do here, is go ahead and use some painter's tape and set up my control surfaces in the neutral position. This is a little bit easier to do than the dowel rod that I showed you earlier on the tail surfaces. It works easier just to go ahead and use a little bit of painter's tape. You want to use a low tack tape so that you don't damage your covering, and I found that this green frog tape actually works really good for this. I'm going to go ahead and just put your control on the neutral surface. Now you can see Seagull has already included a string. What this string is going to be for is to be able to pull your servo cable through the wing without having to fight with it too much. So we're going to go ahead and get that started here. So for my servos on this one, I'm actually going to use the Hi-Tech 645 MGs. These are going to be a good servo for this. And then I also like to use my extensions from zoomrc.net. Really high quality at good price, and you should check them out. I'm going to go ahead and put a 24-inch extension on this, so that way I have plenty of space on the other end to get to my receiver once I get the airplane put up. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and prep our servos. I'm going to be using high-tech servos, and I'm going to go ahead and put the boots on them. If you'll notice on the boots, it has it set up with a little ledge inside there. That is what you want to face outward. That goes in the gap on the servo here. So here's a close-up picture of that. Now we're going to go ahead and install the little brass inserts. Now the brass inserts are designed to go on the bottom of the servo, and they should just slide in there just like that. You should have 4 of them, and just put 1 in each section. And it'll look like that when you get done. Again, the brass inserts are designed to go on the bottom of the servo, towards your servo tray. Now the next part, I'm going to go ahead and get my 24-inch extension put on. These again are my extensions from zoomrc.net. Go ahead and plug that in. And one of the things that you're going to want to make sure you do is always secure these with some type of a clip or something, especially for these ones that are going to be on the inside of the airplane. You want them to be secured on there so that they don't accidentally come off in flight. Because that would not be good. So that part's done. Now my servo is all prepped and ready to go. I'm simply going to go ahead and remove my lid, or my servo tray cover. Be careful not to lose track of your string. You're going to need that here in just a few minutes. And then go ahead and mount my servo to the servo tray. Now what I like to do on these is I always like to make sure that I have the servo with the arm on the servo the farthest section away from the arm on the control surface. Okay, number one, that's going to give you the right length for your control rods, and then it's just going to be better to have it away from the control surface as far as it can go. So we're going to orientate this on the tray just like so, and then I'm going to go ahead and drill my pilot holes and place my servo screws into the servo and the servo tray. Now that I have my holes drilled and I'm ready to install my servos, what I like to do is I like to go back in and put a little thin drop of thin in all the holes. What this does is it strengthens that ball supply in there so that these will last a very long time and I won't have to worry about anything coming apart down the road. So just put a couple of drops down inside there and let that cure for a second, and then you can go ahead and run your servo screws in. Okay, so now that I've got my servo attached to my servo tray, what I actually like to do at this point is I like to go ahead and hook this up to my Futaba 18SZ and go ahead and test this servo first of all and make sure that the servo arm is in the right orientation for what I'm doing. So simply all I'm going to do is I'm going to plug my power source into my receiver. I'm going to check the servo, make sure that it works, and make sure that it's in the actual home position. So that way now I can go ahead and install my servo arm and I know it's going to be in the right spot. Every once in a while these things get a little bit moved and it's a pain to have to take it back to park to readjust your servo arm if it's not in the right location. So that's just a little precaution I take to save myself a little bit of time down the road. Now I'm simply just going to go ahead and install my servo arm. These are kind of a tight fit, so you have to be careful putting these on here. The slot in the servo tray is just exactly the right width. So when you're putting your arm on, you got to just be careful you get it all lined up properly. That one's in place. I go ahead and put my screw in here. Make sure everything is all secured. And then the next thing you want to do is you want to go ahead and tie your extension to your string that's already been placed in between your wing halves. So just tie that in there. You don't have to go crazy with it. Just make sure you got a hold of it. And then that way you can feed your servo extension in through your wing and don't have to fiddle with trying to fish it out of there. This is actually a pretty nice little addition to the Seagull models that they put this in here for you. So just like that, get it all laid out. Then I'm simply just going to pull my string from the other side and pull my servo extension down through there. And then that one's going to be good to go. I did accidentally pull my string out a little bit too far, so I'm going to have to fish that out of the end there, but it's a lot easier to fish it this small space than it is this small space here. Pulled a little bit too hard and pulled my string out, and sometimes that happens. So we're going to go ahead and get that fish through, and then we'll move on. So just to show you what I did here, because I did pull my string out too far, all I simply did was take a washer and tie it to the end of my string, and then it dropped it straight down through the other end so that I can finish pulling my servo extension through. Just a little trick that if you don't know, you don't know. It sure makes it a lot easier to get that through there if you've got a little washer tied on the end. And then that is that, and we'll go ahead and move on to completing the installation on the other servo. Okay, so now what I like to do before I go ahead and secure my hatch for my servo bay, I like to go ahead and get the control rods set up. So make sure you pay close attention. There are two servo push rods. One is going to be for your aileron, that's going to be the 100 millimeter, and one is going to be for your flap, which is the 90 millimeter, okay? You don't want to get these messed up because it's going to be too close on your flap for the longer one. So if you look in the center, you can see just on a quick glance which one's the shorter and which one's the longer. The shorter one's only got a small little knurl here. The rest of it is fully smooth on this one. So you can go ahead and get those set up. Now you can see I've already got these prepped with my silicone tubing. And then at this point, because I've already got my servo in the neutral position, I can just go ahead and kind of lay this out, make my adjustments before I put anything together, and then that way I should be fairly close. And once I get this thing in the air, it should only take me a couple of clicks of trim to get everything squared away. Try to do as much of this as you can going in, so that way you don't have to go and take stuff apart later and make adjustments. And then it's just a simple matter of installing your servo arm on your servo. Like so. And then you can go ahead and make your adjustments on your other end. Get it just as close as you possibly can. Because like I said, we already know we're in the neutral position. So this should make it fairly close for you when you get ready to put a flight on this model. And those are in place. Now I'm not going to tighten down the nuts just yet, but I'm going to just finger tighten them, so that way they don't move around on me. But then later I'll come back and I'll tighten these up fully so they don't move around in flight. Now the next step is going to be to go ahead and pre-drill your holes for your servo bay. So what I like to use for that is I got a little pin vise, and I just go into my corners and start my holes with my pin vise. You don't want to go too crazy because you don't want to poke through and end up going through the other side of your wing. All it takes is a little pilot hole. Just like that. And then the next thing I'm going to do is, I don't particularly like the tiny little screws that come with this airplane. I feel like they're a little too hard to work with. The head on them is quite small, and I want to have something that's a little bit easier to work with. So if I need to make any swaps or anything at the field, or if I need to change anything, I can get to it a lot easier. So I like to use these little short servo screws and put those in instead. They are cap heads, so I can go ahead and use my little drill to place these in. You don't want to go crazy with it. You want to go nice and easy. But these should go in no problem at all. Just like that. And these will secure it very well. And it also makes it a little bit easier to get them in and out in case you ever need to swap a servo or anything like that. I like to take as few tools as I can to the field. So this way, if I have this set up the same, then I know every airplane that I do has these same screws in it. And then I only need a certain amount of tools. I don't have to worry about if I'm bringing the right screwdrivers or anything like that. I have my little kit that I put together, and it's good for maintenance on all my airplanes. So there we go. The aileron servo is now installed. You can go ahead and tighten these up. Those happen to be a 5.5 millimeter. So get them nice and snug. And that aileron servo is ready to go. Now we're going to move on to the flap, and we're going to use the exact same process that we used for the aileron servo on the flap, and then the wing control surfaces are going to be good to go. Well, that's going to wrap up the control surface video for the Maxi lift build. Make sure you stay tuned for the channel for the next video where we're going to wrap this bad boy up. As always, thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.